report that indicated mothers are the #1 perpetrator. And as a mother, I find that very scary. Two things jump out at me. I don't think mothers are even aware that they're the #1 perpetrator. And that is what is scary. I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to, I do a lot of work. I wouldn't call it social work because I'm not a qualified social worker, but I have a bleeding heart. And so, because I coach little children and I've written a children's book, so I do book readings, and I have a lot of interaction with children. And for whatever reason, some have clung to me. So I've had a situation where one girl, because I have a daughter, we have play dates, I don't judge. So it's not like, okay, well, if you're from this neighborhood, you can have a play date with my daughter, but if you're from that neighborhood, you can't. She has play dates with every single person, and there are a few children that she's connected with. One child, after a few play dates, came and said, "Auntie, I have something to tell you," because she obviously felt comfortable. I reached out to a social worker who said, encourage her to talk, because it's obvious she's found someone finally that she can trust. When we went to make the report and in investigating and having the social worker deal with it we followed the process, we realized that, yes, something had happened sexually years ago, but the abuse that she's facing now is actually coming from home. And it's because they are just not equipped. And so every time they think they're protecting her because she wants to go out to play, you can't go out to play because X will happen to you again. And so they have now become the abusers without even knowing. They're not well equipped to take her past what happened to her when she was very young. And they have now become the abusers. And I don't think that they know that they're the abusers. And I would like to suggest that the majority of these mothers that we are suggesting are the perpetrators are not aware that they are the ones causing the emotional abuse, that they're not aware that the amount of licks. I mean, I've been in a police station where that mother should not have taken that child home. She should not have been allowed, because she was saying, when I reach home, it's cut tail for you, and she wasn't using tail, and we allowed her to go home. There was nothing in place to suggest, ma'am, you're not in a state to take your child home, and bring a social worker in.
Right, and what I think you're recommending is something like respite care, which is something we don't have developed in Trinidad, where parents who are going through a lot of stressors can take a break. And of course there's a need as well to educate parents, because you're very right. Most abusers don't set out to be abusers when it comes to physical abuse and emotional abuse, right? When they're chastising, breaking down a child through the emotional abuse, often it's because they think they're trying to encourage, you're so done, you're so this. They think that's going to encourage the child to do schoolwork, etc. That's the same situation, the same idea behind the physical abuse. I mean, corporal punishment is widely used. I mean, when you recommend to a parent that isn't the most appropriate form of discipline, I mean, they look at you as if you're just talking a lot of nonsense. Unfortunately for many parents, that's the only tool they have in their arsenal in terms of disciplining their children, and they think discipline is about punishment.
But even using corporal punishment, the level is the issue. We're not equipped to even know.
Yes.
I believe in licks. I think there is a place for it. In fact, the Bible talks about it. But in a calm state, it might be a slap, or there are ways for it. And yes, versus I'm just frustrated, I'm angry, I can't even deal with my anger, and so now I'm just beating you.
I think it goes along a line, and when you look along that line, it moves from, you did something wrong, I need to punish, but the way we look at it is, no, you need to discipline, because there is a difference between punishment and discipline. Punish is not meant to teach, rather discipline is meant to teach. So you find that if we begin to understand that premise, we move away from the punishment mentality. The second thing is, when you think about the levels of frustration, it starts off with normal discipline, but if you are not able to manage your emotion and or your level of frustration, because most time when we begin this thing about punish, you're thinking about all the frustration you have to go through, especially as the report is indicating single parents. So there's an added level of frustration that Crystal spoke about, and that is where we take it too far or we cross the line. And a lot of times we don't mean to cross the line, because you feel remorse after the fact, because you love your child and you want the best. But do you know how to? Do you have the capacity to understand that what you are doing is creating more harm than good? So what you have happening over time is severe psychological and emotional abuse that would ruin a person for life. So here it is, it happened for a prolonged period. You go into young adulthood and adulthood, and now you're dealing with depression, anxiety, worry, fright, because of what you would have met with in your earlier days. Prolonged, you're talking about from birth till about 13, with constant punishment. That does something to a person, especially because the child is not understanding what you are trying to bring across, because you cannot bring it across at an age appropriate level so that the young child may understand, I am doing this, or I'm taking these actions because of, I want to change a behavior, I want to change an action, so this is why I am doing this. But we don't do that. We beat you, right? And we know in Trinidad, with a beating also come verbal abuse with it. Right? So it's you're good for nothing, I should have planted a tree, you're this, you're that, and I am being very kind with my words now. Right? But we all know when we're talking about beat is the verbal abuse that is hurled at you along with the physical abuse. So eventually you have now been demoralized, you feel as if you are nothing, and that is what we perpetuate in terms of this abuse. And I think the report is spot on. But more importantly, what I think the report is saying to us is that we have not been at any level having meaningful conversation or even action in relation to child abuse and the taboo way that we look at it.
I agree.